Welcome, listeners. I have a special guest with me today. But before I introduce him, just a quick note on the format of this piece of learning videos. As you know, Talent Coven, as we call it under Think Talent, is a series of educational sort of community kind of resources available to anybody in the community. And the purpose here is just to get perspectives of different kind. And this whole Talent Coven, we call it managing talent without wizards and witches. And the idea is that how can we simplify it? And as part of that series, I'm having these conversations. So my guest today is Mr. Amitava Mukherji. He's in a way, a specialist in capabilities, competencies, and assessments. Had a long career as an entrepreneur and a corporate sort of executive for many years. And for the last many years, one of his areas of passion has been to work around functional capabilities, competencies, and assessments. And that's what I'm going to have a conversation with him about. What I like about him is also that he's extremely reflective and periodically comes up with insights which very often you would not get from too many other people. So Amitav, welcome, and thanks for making time for this conversation.
Thank you for those kind words, Bimal, and thank you for inviting me here. Yes.
Great. So Amitav, I think just to tee up the conversation, what's your broad view on, functional capabilities in organizations? How are they developing? How are people looking at it? What's your own sense of where is it really going?
See, I would say that there was a certain. I'd like to step back and spend a small moment here. I would say that up until about 2015, 2018, etc. Yeah, that part. Yeah, and I'm saying all the way from early parts of this economy. Yeah, we have largely been into operations. Right. We've not tried to build products. We've not tried to get into high-end solutions, yeah, etc. So the need for technical depth was not so much, especially in let's say things that were called technology, for example, IT services, etc. Yeah, there wasn't really so much of value of technical depth for a long time. Then by and by certain sectors have come up. One is of course this digital product oriented IT services that have taken off in some way. The other is pharma has moved on from generics manufacturing, yeah, to more advanced molecules or creating their own molecules, etc., etc. So suddenly there's been some pull there. And in this way, and then of course there's been a whole gang of startups in all kinds of industries that are trying to explore artificial intelligence and machine learning and those sorts of tools. Yeah, so a certain amount of technical depth is creeping into certain areas. Yeah, so that's the picture as of now, as I see it. Yeah, I would say that we are moving. In slightly haphazard ways, certain parts of the economy are going towards technology,
right,
and technical depth, and other parts are staying where they were in a way.
So if you Amitabh take a slightly, let's say, a narrower view over the last 20 years or 25 years, and my view has been that there's almost been like too much emphasis on general management skills and the behavioral side of capability, and most companies in particularly in the areas of manufacturing, automobile, etc. While there are pockets of specialization and pockets of functional expertise, but in general, we've not given it that much of importance as far as functional capabilities are concerned. And as you rightly pointed out, some industries are moving ahead now. But what it has also done is that it has also made a lot of our industry, almost uncompetitive, if I may say so, from a global platform point of view. And that is showing up in our economy, our value add, our position in the global markets, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely, absolutely, you nailed it. Yeah, it's really showing up in the competitiveness of Indian industry in a big way.
Right. So from a change point of view over the next, let's say, few years, of course you mentioned pharma and technology in the IT sense and all that, but what are you seeing in other industries? For example, financial services, manufacturing. What's your view in those industries?
So we were doing some, what I call leadership workshops. I nowadays have a slight grin in my face when I mention that, because I'm slightly embarrassed that they are still being done. Yeah, and I think I have now stopped or resisting offers to run such programs now. But we were running this for a capital equipment manufacturer, and in the sharing among the participants, we discovered, that when the customer asks them to implement IoT, along with the capital equipment, so that people at senior leadership levels, or even people sitting in corporate offices or offices, can see what's happening with the equipment, as installed in various places, etc., etc. The sales force asks a specific IoT team that the organization has to come along with them, and talk about the IoT part for the capital equipment. So the IoT people talk about IoT, and the rest of the capital equipment is being talked about by the sales chap.
Right.
And this fellow doesn't want to learn that, and the IoT fellow, of course, doesn't know any of this.
Right.
So he's in a different kind of character altogether. So this is the, I would say, one is to actually say that why are these people not learning? That's the obvious thing to ask. But we really need to ask at a leadership level, how are we creating aspiration in organizations for people to pick up new skills, skills that enhance their ability to do bigger things, greater things, out there in the market. That's really a question that I would actually think is worth reflecting on for leaders. How are we shaping aspirations? I would say that a lot of aspiration shaping has been around this word called leadership. And it's been drummed up tremendously, especially, let's say, 1990s onwards. And I would say one of the organizations that I was associated with, General Electric, used it in a big way. But they used to put a prefix to the word leadership: human resource leadership, information management leadership. There was a finance management program. There was a technical leadership program. And so there was a prefix to the word leadership in their context. Apart from that, there were other people who were doing other kinds of things similarly. Motorola was doing certain things, I remember. But over time, I don't see even that prefix. People just talk about leadership, and leadership in all kinds of contexts, as if Dhoni and Kohli and President of India and everybody in between, do the same jobs. And so that's been an irritant for me. There's just not enough engagement with the subject of the work in organizations.
No, that's an interesting way of looking at it, because for example, some of the work I have done is, for example, how do you develop R&D leaders, or how do you develop sales leaders, or how do you develop any other functional leaders? And if you go even a little bit one step sort of in a way beyond that, I would almost ask the question that how do you develop experts around whom you can actually build value and build products and so on and so forth? Because leadership in itself has a connotation of general management, and that's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm also reflecting periodically that if you look at some of the biggest value creators around the globe, actually they've been more technocrats in many industries.
Absolutely.
And so question, Amitabh, to you is that what is it that from our, I don't know whether it's some education issue, whether it's a mindset issue, but what is it that is stopping us almost from developing experts from a functional perspective in our milieu, so to say?
A big question. I would say that there are many parts to it. Of course, the familiar flogging horse is our education system. Our engineers, our technocrats probably are not up to scratch. Yeah, large numbers of them are not up to scratch. But however, given the statistics, yeah, our denominators being fantastically large,
Yeah.
I refuse to believe that the numerator is still zero. Yeah, the numerator by the sheer size of denominator, yeah, would emerge to be something. Yeah?
Right.
So that's one observation I have. The second thing is that our entrepreneurs have not been creative in trying to walk the path of product development.
Right.
Including our large IT services companies. Really look at their track record of product development. It's been quite,
correct,
far lower in their priorities. Yeah? And pharma also for a long time, etc. So we've really not demanded technical skills. Yeah? I remember an old assessment center in an energy company, and one of those bright boys asked us, yeah, but you're trying to assess us on these sorts of leadership behaviors. Yeah, I'd like to be assessed on my technical competence. I want to become a great a great person to be maintaining these sorts of equipment. Yeah, process plant kind of equipment. Yeah?
Right.
I said, look, that career ladder is not available in this sort of an organization.
Interesting.
And if you want to progress along the lines of, depth of capital equipment design and etc., then you need to make a move into, an ABB or a Schneider or a company of those sorts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where those equipment are getting Siemens. Yeah. Where those equipment are getting made. Yeah. Because this company will not allow you. So that's a business model restriction. Of course, we do not expect a power plant company to be manufacturing equipment, but that's therefore a limited example. But in many cases, that's not a limitation. Yeah, let's look at IT services, for example. What prevents them from bunching up their experience in different industries and creating products? Yeah, that compete with global product-based businesses. Yeah? So there's no restriction there, yeah, unlike in that example. Yeah? But they don't do it. Yeah? They don't put their minds around doing this sort of. So poor education, unwillingness of businesses to go in that direction has led us to this world of vast numbers of people doing what is called operations.
Right.
Yeah? And about 4 or 5 layers of supervision. Yeah. What in technical organization structuring we would call merely span breaking. Yeah?
Span breakers, yeah.
There's no great value add. Yeah? But just that one chief operating officer cannot be overseeing 10,000 people, and therefore you've got hordes of managers in the middle. Yeah? So that's all it is. Yeah, that's all it is.
So tell me, Amitav, you refer to it in a slightly different way, but I'd like to bunch it into one bucket, if you will. I see personally that at all levels, whether it's individual, team levels, organization level, even for entrepreneurs, the incentivization system in our overall ecosystem, if you will, is actually very poor for this. We don't really, whether socially you don't, get the right kind of money and promotion and so on and so forth at an individual level, or there is no career ladder for you, as you mentioned, or entrepreneurs don't get, enough money and support if they want to really do deep research into a product side and develop something. So, that whole incentivization in the ecosystem is, I think, a big problem across board,
Yeah.
And
fully agree.
I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that particular aspect as to how.
Yeah, so I saw the one hotel organization incubate a different hotel chain within themselves, which was culturally different at an entirely different price point. So the bright young man who was made the head of this new unit he actually took his team out of the corporate office, went to a
Mm.
completely different part of town, much lower glamour and much lower pomp and show in their building. Yeah, simple buildings, simple offices, and that's how they started off. And they built it from there. Of course, the story hasn't been all that great, but that's a separate matter. I mean,
Mm.
startups don't succeed as surely as a
Yeah.
lot of large businesses do. Yeah, but this thing is resisted from both sides. A
Mm.
lot of bright people would like to take these entrepreneurial opportunities provided by organizations,
Yeah.
but they don't want to kind of let go of these creature comforts of
Mm.
corporate
Mm.
life,
Mm. Mm.
and also they don't want the organization to say that if you do not succeed, when you come back into this organization, we are keeping the door open,
Mm.
but where you will come in and how you will come in will
Yeah.
depend upon what happens at that point of time, which
Mm.
is such a
Mm.
natural and a normal thing to say and for a person to accept, an intelligent person to accept.
Mm.
But
Mm.
people want all of their, career paths to be secure and sure shot. Yeah.
Mm.
If I come back, I'll get everything that I have today, etc., etc. No, you cannot have everything that you
Mm.
have today. Yeah, go there, fight, get the thrill of fighting. Yeah, don't just do it for some kind of a tick in the box in your
Right.
career graph. Yeah, so that's the employee side. The corporate side also similarly often does not create appropriate structures.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
either there's too much control. I've seen that in some IT services companies, that there wasn't enough separation of the product teams. Yeah.
Mm.
And or I mean, this sort of a division that I just described was really a best in class kind of an experience, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, but I don't see this sort of a story happening very often.
Happening very often. Yeah. Okay. So, Amitabh, last question. I think those are all interesting thoughts. So, can you share one example of maybe a company doing something different to actually make sure that they are deeply developing these functional or technical capabilities? Any one example, and what are they really doing well?
I think the story of some of these organizations that have tried to implement technical career ladders,
Hmm.
yeah, is quite interesting. Yeah, it typically does not start from the HR side. Yeah,
Right.
typically the ask comes from the tech side. Yeah,
Hmm.
that we need a ladder. Yeah, then HR is called in. HR has not really had experiences in doing these sorts of things.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and then some amount of thinking goes around. Committees are formed. Yeah,
Right.
and Excel sheets get developed, and what is this role and what is the next role and the third role, etc.,
Right.
etc. All of that gets done. So I would say that these sorts of efforts have happened in many
Hmm.
organizations. I
Hmm.
would say that large numbers of organizations in chemical industry, cement, power, yeah, have, when I speak with the people, they can recall that such efforts were made.
Right.
And I can also see that most of those efforts don't fructify into
Hmm.
a full system, that is compensation structure is aligned, and a complete roadmap is created, and
Right.
people know where they are going, etc. So the full thing doesn't develop, but at different levels of maturity,
Hmm.
these sorts of systems have come into being. Aditya Birla has created some kinds of frameworks of
Hmm.
this sort. Yeah, I have seen, yeah, myself. And as I said, some of these product companies have
Right.
started building them. Internationally, of course, there are very nice examples. I mean, if you, so there are now people who are trying to encourage it from the large organization
Hmm.
side. For example, IBM Watson
Correct.
has started something called what they call talent frameworks.
Hmm.
Okay. And they have put together, they say, a pile of 3,000 job descriptions
Okay.
across industries. And they're helping companies they have some case studies of some healthcare companies and some transportation companies, etc. on their website. They make interesting reading. The US government, especially certain state level governments, have taken up this issue of competence building in the workforce in a structured way. So they're creating. So the old Department of Labor of the United States was famous for having created what is known as the ONET network.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
But now people are going beyond that, certain states. And I've recently been reading some stuff. So job description frameworks are being created for at state levels and things like that. Yeah. So people are trying. Some companies have done excellent work. There is a beautiful case study of Spotify. Yeah?
Okay.
The technical career ladder, how they conceived it, how it looks, and what are the challenges they faced in setting it up and things like that. Yeah. So people are doing some work of this kind in different places in different ways. But I think there's a lot that needs to be done. In a country like ours, I think it's largely missing. I would say that despite the fact that I mentioned an example, I would say that there are enormous distances to be covered in this area. Especially pharma, where I would have imagined that much better frameworks would have existed. Yeah,
correct.
They hardly exist even today. IT services are also not very well structured in their product development side. So there are lots that needs to be done.
Yeah. So I think, on that note, as we end the conversation, I think, it's a little bit of a, loss of opportunity, but I think I would also say that there is therefore huge opportunities for companies to actually look at, creating increasing value or increased value and move from, as you called, from operations to, product development and creating value on those. So thank you very much for being part of that conversation. And hopefully it's given some, ideas, thoughts, and, trigger points for our friends who are listening in. So thank you very much, Amitava.
Thank you, Bimal, for this opportunity. So nice to be speaking with you.